Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today, you've seen him before. He was here about 10 months ago, I think. The man, the myth, the legend, my husband, Mr. Don Dickey. So we came back today to try to give an update on where things have happened or where things have gone relationship-wise related to my TBI. So it's been, like I said, about 10 months since we did this last. So things have changed. Life has changed a little bit. And we've been asked to give a little bit of an update and see where we are with everything. So anything you want to say before I start asking questions?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
We're happy. We are.
Happy, smiley, happy people. All right. So, oh, hey, you know what? I wrote myself a note. Our last interview as a couple was back in December of 2023. Look at that. So, yeah, it helps when I review my notes. This is one of the things that's still an issue for me is my memory, obviously. I gave an update back in March of this year on kind of where I was at, and I did it again a few weeks ago, just kind of updating where I am symptom wise personally. So, what's new with our relationship in the last 10 months? What more have you learned as a caregiver as far as dealing with a spouse who still has brain injury leftovers?
Um, I think most of it has been patience still, like accepting the fact that there's just more stuff that I have to do and remember to do. Before there was a lot, you were functioning at such a high level. I didn't have to do much. I was just kind of, not to sound like I was a lame duck husband, but I really didn't have to do much. You planned everything to a T, to a fault. It was like flawless. Um, Whereas now, there's a lot of stuff that I do more of the planning on, more of the stuff that I take the lead on, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, leading the home is typically traditionally been the man's job. So, not to sound chauvinistic or whatever, but it's just kind of naturally folded into that. Um, but it's been good. So the patience has been the biggest thing. And then I think just trusting my instincts, because before it was just kind of I didn't trust myself enough to make a lot of those decisions or calls or now I do. It's just kind of just go with the natural flow of things and deal with it as it comes. I have learned that my patience level was affected, and I've had to adapt to that. Um, which before I was like the most chill person you'd ever meet. Now there are so much happens so often, and I'm dealing with so much more that I don't want to say hit a wall like you do, but I hit a point where I'm just annoyed and I'm just like, get the hell away from everybody. Um, so yeah.
Well, and I think you finally admitted that you probably had a bit of a concussion from the accident as well. Not to the same extent.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't think we could handle both of us being like this, but you definitely were affected, and you tried to kind of play it off for a long time. No, I wasn't. A little bit of denial.
Yeah, I still do kind of because it's not like I've sought out or really done any treatment for anything. I think probably the other biggest thing, and counseling, has helped us a lot through a lot of things anyways, but we use that and have used our therapist as a couple for marriage counseling to really dive into some of the stuff that triggers this stuff. Um and how to really kind of navigate some of that stuff and learn uh from things that we didn't see from that perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, I know I've learned that my tolerance level for things is definitely different, and and how I come across to people is not what I thought it has been a lot. That's been more since hitting my head in August, which I already talked about on the show here. So having that second injury while trying to recover certainly set me backwards, and brought up some new challenges where I don't necessarily see all the things that I do.
Yeah.
And
Anything that's black pretty much is gone from your vision, which is weird to me,
yeah,
but I found that that's what when, the stuff that we've between things in the garage, things on the truck, things on our camper, there's a lot of stuff we have that's black, and for whatever reason, your peripheral vision or even your direct line of sight,
it doesn't exist.
black doesn't exist to
Yeah.
you. So it's kind of I got to go more chrome with stuff, I guess.
Right. You hate Chrome. That's gonna be lovely. Uh, but even just things that I say, I don't realize how short I can come across at times.
Hmm, yeah. I
We've had
think
that
that's the
come up a few
patience.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not so much even my patience, just the fact that I will say things and I've said many times that my filter was broken in the accident, but I think it's even more so now because
Yeah.
I don't filter what I say quite as well. I used to be able to say, "Oh, no, I don't want to say things like that" in my head before they even came out, and now they come out before I filter them.
Yeah, but you're getting better. I think you're getting better on that. I mean, there's still certain things there, but now that you're aware of it, I think you're trying to focus on it. I would say probably this things that cause that to happen more often is a higher stress level from what I've seen. It happens more often when you're stressed. It happens more often when you're feeling pressured. Um,
Mhm.
Rather than a just natural ebb and flow conversation or someone says something, you talk to them, it's fine. It's more along the lines of when you're getting closer to that pressure wall that
Mhm.
I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, when you're feeling pressured or stressed, I think is when stuff like that happens to come out more.
Mhm.
And it's because you're at that point you're losing your focus. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess along the lines before we got onto the sidetrack on this conversation, just leading more things to you is even my dad commented when we went out to lunch the other day that was the fastest he'd ever seen me make a decision because I was never good at making decisions and making choices at the restaurants before, but now I do rely on you a lot for that because I get overwhelmed with too many choices, and I just say, I don't know, you pick, and I've gotten much more, or I guess I've given up more of the control on like where we go to eat or what we eat because it's too overwhelming to make a decision. So I just kind of leave that on you.
yeah, and that's the little stuff. The important stuff that you've got to deal with is work, and that stuff's more important. Those little things, that's the stuff I can take on that gets us back to gets you back to where you need to be
Mhm.
long term.
Mhm.
Whether it's to get back to work, to get back to nursing or nurse practitioner, to actually be able to do your job at that high of a level again, it's going to require me to take that. And that's something I gladly do.
Mhm. Mhm. So let's talk struggles and strengths for a little bit. Let's do negative first. What's been our biggest struggle as we continue on this journey?
I think the mix of when I'm feeling stressed and you're feeling stressed.
Mhm.
I think in those moments, we grow a little more distant because we just kind of stop responding. We just become like, all right, we both know we're stressed. We're not going to fight, which we've gotten better.
Mhm.
Like we just don't fight. We don't argue. It's just, all right, I know you're in a mood. You know I'm in a mood. We're just going to let it go. Sit on the couch, watch TV, and eat popcorn. Um, that's kind of become, we've recognized that, and that's probably one of our biggest weaknesses. But the strength for me is the communication that we've gotten and the fact that like I said, we go to the counseling, we talk to each other, we actively work together to come up with those solutions. Probably the best thing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think I'd agree on that one. How are we in the general sense, coping with all of this? How are you coping with
Um, I don't yet.
this?
Um, I still don't. There's so much that has to happen and so much that we do that. it requires me to not even think about that right now.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of stuff like the, coping method to me before. There's so much I used to do, but now I can't. Um, but like we went shooting last weekend. To me, that's relaxing. We went out, spent the whole weekend out on at your dad's place in the country, and I got to shoot my 22. It's not what I would normally do. Like if I would love to go out and shoot for hours and hours and hours and just be me, just the gun and just shoot, or go out and do my archery, or my shoulder's bad, so that's tougher for me to do.
Mhm.
Or I before I used to take it all my frustration and stuff out in my construction when I did side jobs and work for people. But I can't do that anymore. I'm doing more around the house, so that's where I come home. um I cope because by changing jobs and getting a better job
Mhm.
that allows me to be more flexible and more at home with the family. um I cope by when I am home, I'm outside doing yard work. You and I are doing it together. To me, that relieves my stress. Um, my dad, however, says it stresses me out even more because you're just constantly going. But I am, but that's how I'm coping. I'll be able to cope when things for you start to get back to normal, because until you're back to normal, you are overstressed. So
Mhm.
that's how do I cope? I cope by making sure you have what you need.
I still don't cope very well yet. Running was always my main coping mechanism. And if I was frustrated, stressed, whatever, I could go for a run. And I always used to say I would solve the world's problems while I was out on my run because I'd come back and
Yeah.
I'd have conversations in my head and go through all the different possible outcomes. And by the time I got back, like I didn't even need to have conversations anymore because I'd already had them. And whatever was pissing me off wasn't pissing me off anymore. And I'm trying to get back into exercising regularly, but
Mm.
it's a trade-off, as we were talking about that the other day too. It's a trade-off because as I get running more and get more active, I'm hitting my wall harder and faster again.
Yeah.
So trying to balance that with increasing work demands, and I
Yeah,
don't
but
think
it
I'm
does
coping very
good.
well yet
I don't know. I think
either.
the exercise has done you well in the last couple of weeks. It's definitely affected your mood in a more positive light. You've laughed more. You've been more relaxed. There's a lot going on. So the fact to find the time has been difficult, for you to
Mhm.
do that. But the fact that you have, like I said, I think you're laughing more, you're relaxed more, you're
Mhm.
sleeping better, for the most part. That type of stuff, it's improved. So I think that will help.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Questions and comments I had written down that we may have received from other people. And some of that is since I'm looking like I'm doing better and I'm speaking a whole lot better, why am I not back to work yet? And I know you've gotten some of that too. Why is your wife not back to work yet?
Yeah, I've had to ask that, but it's honestly, you're just not back to where you were. You do hit your walls. You hit in a high stress environment, 4 hours is a lot for you. Um, you used to come home after working a full day and you'd go running, and then you'd come in and then you'd read a book for an hour and a half, or you were constantly trying to learn, but you can't learn that way anymore.
Mhm.
Um, if you were to go do work stuff and then come home after, 4 or 5 hours, 3, 4 days a week, you've definitely gotten better. Like, when I think back 6, 8 months ago, 10 months ago, even, you would go to work, you'd come home, and that was it.
Mhm.
After 2, 3 days of work, you were wiped out for the week. The whole weekend, you were spending time recovering. So it's been a gradual increase. So now you can do, 4 days a week. You've got all this activities with the kids we're going to. Your headaches and stuff really kick in, and it prevents you from actually enjoying some of that quality of life. But it's getting there, and it's slow. And it really has messed with your, I want to say psyche, but mental health.
Mhm.
The depression, the anxiety, the why aren't I getting better faster? um, your self-doubt, your self-questioning, your confidence is just lack of confidence.
Mhm.
Whereas before, you did not lack confidence when I first met you, by any means or stretch of the imagination. You weren't cocky or rude or belligerent or any of those things, but you were definitely confident. And that has taken a huge hit,
Mhm.
and then there's stuff that as you get closer to that wall, it's almost like your brain reverts back to that trauma, and all of a sudden you can't remember things that you used to remember. But
Yeah.
if we get you back to a calm state, 2 or 3 days goes by and you're sitting, then all of a sudden you can recall all those things again. So it's really trying to manage that in malleable chunks. Like, as a nurse or practitioner or doctor, you're dealing with that stuff constantly in clinics. It's very fast paced. I relate it to when I was a firefighter, or even at the scene of the accident. You got to see a side of me that you'd never seen. You saw the firefighter, the paramedic, the guy in charge, the leader, like, okay, stay here, don't move. I've got everything under control. Let me go check on the other people. You know, that's the type of person that you used to be able to do, and you could think under those scenarios
Yeah.
all the time. But if you were to try and do that now, after a couple of hours, you're shot. There's
Mhm.
there's nothing else. And that's the hard part, I know, for you, because you want to get back to work.
Mhm.
The side that people don't see, and this is the part that I didn't think I was going to share, but I'm going to anyways, is the when we're laying in bed and we're talking and you are just bawling on my shoulder and I'm just holding you, and I can't get back to work. I can't provide for my family. I mean, that stuff is probably the hardest thing for me to deal with and cope. Um, but in that moment, it's not about me, it's about you. So it's, why aren't you back to work? Because you're just not physically able to do it yet, or mentally. Um, and so much of that mental health ties into your physical health. So it's my
Mhm.
take, at least.
Mhm. Mhm. Pretty insightful, honestly. Thanks for making me tear up.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. Sorry.
um, yeah, and that's exactly it. I'm not back to where I was. Yeah, I can have conversations, but I'll still forget the conversations. I'll still lose track of what's going on. If it's busy and there's multiple conversations going on at the same time, don't ask me to regurgitate what you just said because I won't
Yeah.
be able to remember it. And that has led to arguments, not fights, but
Mhm.
just arguments because I don't always remember the conversations that we have, and it's very frustrating. And that's when I'd usually end up breaking down in tears because it just drives me bonkers that I still can't remember things. Because I was talking about this to somebody the other day. I don't, surprise, don't remember who. But when I would go work in the hospital, I would have 12, 14 patients. I would go review my charts and look at all the images, look at all my notes on everybody, go see my patients, have conversations with them, do exams. And then I'd go sit down and write my notes. And I remembered all of that from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine even doing that with one person right now, because if I don't write everything down, I won't remember when I walk out of the room.
Yeah.
And that's the part that jumps out to me the most that people don't see is that I can't remember that part from one thing to another. I've had people say, "Well, you're doing such a great job with your podcast." So here's the thing with my podcast. I have a few notes jotted down for myself, so I know where to go with the conversation, and I'm getting better at following the conversation so that I can ask people really educated questions or sound like I'm asking really educated questions at least. But when I go back to listen to that podcast to take out any technical issues or do any editing, I'm listening to that conversation for the first time all over again because I don't remember that we talked about that stuff. And I've made that comment to you several times. I'm like,
Mhm.
We had this fabulous conversation." I'm like, holy crap, we talked about that. I don't even remember talking about that. And it's, that's, I think, the hardest thing for me because my memory was always so fabulous before.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how your mind works until it doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah. I always joke with you that, hey, with the accident, we knocked you into normal. Because most of the people I know, that's the level that's my norm. I don't remember anything that happened 6 weeks ago. I don't remember anything that happened 6 days ago. I don't remember anything that happened yesterday. 90% of the time. It's very rare. It has to be something that happened like that really affected me in some way for me to remember it that soon. But we can go back to when you and I met. back in July of 2021. And, I can tell you the red tank top you were wearing and the tan colored shorts slash tennis skirt
It's
thing,
black.
black.
Nice try though.
But it was still a
Close.
skirt.
It was a
So,
skirt,
I
yeah.
mean, I can still remember, the conversations we had that night, how we walked around the lake, we saw a deer, we went to a bar, it started out as just a dinner, and all the other things that we talked about. And I can remember that to a T, almost to a fault, like I'm replaying the memory in my head. But so I always joke, yeah, we knocked you into normal with this, but it's not a joke. It's not something to joke about, but I do deal with things with sarcasm. So yeah.
My sarcasm broke a little bit in the accident too, which kind of sucked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably been one of my biggest, honestly, when you go back to that one question you just asked earlier to me, like what's been the hardest thing? Like I always had kind of a, not like a, I mean, yes, morbid, but just different sense of humor. And you used to just totally get that.
No.
And now you are so much more literal.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. And I'm like, I was trying to be funny. Okay. So I've had to adapt my sense of humor a little bit, which is hard for me because that's my defense mechanism.
It
So
always was for me too. So it's frustrating that I can't enjoy things like I used to. So yeah, there's that too. But yeah, the problem with brain injuries is that it's an invisible disability. People don't see it. I look just fine. Um, yeah, I get fatigued more easily, so people might see that part, but it's for the most part, I physically look just fine. It's on the inside that everything is still very scrambled.
yeah. And the physical features are there if people are looking. Most people don't notice it. They might notice a little glitch here and there when we're out.
Mhm.
Um, if we're at a group of friends' house for dinner or something, and we're like, I think that's where you've come also to rely on me a little bit is I see and pick up on those cues much faster than you do. And I've learned how to make more of a gracious exit. I usually throw the babe, I gotta be at work in the morning, or
Mhm.
or I'm really tired, babe. Can we just go? I use that more to take on the brunt of why we're leaving to the friends or family or whatever. But it's it's been that's probably the biggest. Like other people don't see it because I try to protect you from some of that. Like I don't want you to hit your wall when that many people are around.
Maybe you shouldn't.
No,
Maybe,
because then it
maybe,
causes more mental health issues for you later because you get upset that you were crying or you broke down or you couldn't because
but maybe that would help people understand things if you don't take the excuse off me.
mm,
Because like when we were shooting and I had my little meltdown and my dad had never seen that before. I've hidden it from most people pretty well.
yeah, but and that's the thing is like I mean I guess that's the protector in me
Mm.
is I don't want
It
people
w
to see my wife that way. Not
it was
me like
almost
for
nice
me, but
though. It was almost freeing for me because he saw it and he kind of got an idea of what we deal with on a regular basis. Because I don't think I honestly don't think most of my family really knows because they haven't seen it.
I'll have to think about that one because I don't know if I like that idea.
Yeah,
I like being your protector
I
and guardian, and
I know.
I know how you feel when people look at you and they look at you, whether it's with pity or how it comes across sometimes to you, and especially in those moments, like when you're already feeling that way. With your dad, it's different because dad's, father myself of a daughter who gets emotional is um it's different than the outside world.
Fair.
Not that I'm wrong. Lord knows I could be wrong, but um, it's I know how it affects you mentally if other people see you that way,
Mhm.
because then I see how you are after the fact and no one else does. And I don't like that you see yourself that way when it happens. So
True. True.
so maybe I can learn to engage that off of the environment and the scenario we're in. Um, too, because there's going to be times where maybe there's not an opportunity for you to go and take a quick break, or it's not going to
Mhm.
be a safe environment or
Mhm.
a good thing. So
Mhm.
that's something I'll have to learn.
Because part of my goal with all of this, sharing all of this information, is to educate people on what's going on, what's happening. It's why I wrote the book. It's why I put it all out there, is to just to let people know that this happens. And I've had several people reach out and say, thank you for sharing that because I have that too, and I thought it was just me. So it's an educational piece too. And yeah, in the moment it probably sucks, and maybe I'll be more emotional about it than I think at the moment right now, but maybe that'd be a good thing to share. I don't know, something to think about.
Yeah,
I had a question come through on how have things changed in our household, and I think we kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but maybe go through a little bit more deeply. I know we've had the kids doing more, which rightly so. They're older.
they're
They
old
can, they
enough.
can
They
do
need to.
they can do more.
That's why you have children. They become your slaves for a couple of years before you kick them out of the house. And nowadays they don't ever move out, so they've got to learn to be adults. Anyways, no, honestly, I don't know, because we always did pretty good anyways. For a
Mhm.
short period of time, I think a lot fell on more me and the kids took on a lot. But I think where it really showed is the growth mentally for the kids.
Mhm.
In the past, I'd say definitely more so in the past year. Um, them having to grow up a little bit faster than I think we would have preferred. They've matured so much in just how they approach situations, how they approach other people, how they approach you, me. The communication, though, part of it has improved, I would say, exponentially between the kids and us. I would say there's a little more like any chance they get away from us, they'll take. But that's part of being a natural team, but it's also because I think that's their way of coping and getting
Yeah.
away from it for a while. It's been so much for so long that they need that break too.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm
but
sure I get to be
they've
a
done
lot for
good,
them too.
I mean, like you started training and running right now, and the kids want to go out and run with you.
That's a lot of
Um,
fun. I love that they come
so
with me.
it's helping them learn to cope in a positive way and be creative about their coping. Hayden's thrown himself into his school and his acting. Becca's thrown herself into her band and marching band and her friends at school. Brycey's gotten into this Dungeons and Dragon and Science Club, and they're doing more things, which I think is a positive thing instead of just sitting around the house.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's also given you space, which has allowed you to be able to deal with things and work on things that you need to work on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I still feel a sense of needing to do more around the house now because you're working all the time and I'm not. So I know I still try to do that as much as I can, and I do feel a little sense of failure when I have bad days and I can't get that done and I have to ask you to cook and you worked all day long and then you got to come home and cook because I hit my wall and I can't do anything, and I still feel a lot of guilt on that part.
yeah, I don't like that you feel guilt. I'm not gonna, I guess, gotta be real here, right? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. There's times I come home and I get asked to do stuff, or I know that there's stuff that needs to be done, and I'm just tired. I just want to sit. Um, I've got some issues going on, that mental health, physical health, that I kind of ignore. So it's kind of it's tough sometimes. It really is. There's times and I have to catch myself. I'll use this example the other night, after dinner and stuff, I just didn't feel good. And I'm sure my stomach was upset because I was just overly stressed and I had too much going on, and came home and I cooked dinner and did this. And I just came into the bedroom afterwards and I just laid down, shut the door, and went to sleep. I didn't say goodnight to anyone, which is totally out of the norm. I didn't kiss you like I normally do. I didn't wait for you. There was nothing. It was just I'm spent, I'm done. And then I think the good part though is you recognize that and you just let me do it. Um, you knew I needed it. You know, that's the stuff, that's where we've gotten better at reading each other's cues. So
Mhm.
that's the good thing.
Mhm.
So,
Feelings of how long this recovery is taking.
dear Lord, please help me now. Um, yeah, I wish it was faster. We all do. I know you do. I know I do. You know, there's a lot of things and decisions that were made in our family and our life, things that we had to do. You know, I mean, one of the things that probably, you know, it impacted us the most was I was with a worked for a global company, really big. I loved my job. I loved the company I worked for. Um, I was an expert in my field, and since then, there's been things that have come up that, you know, they've brought up that they want me back, but I'm not even willing to go back. Um, one, because of the lifestyle change that changing company has done, but I would have never thought of leaving. To having to pull money out of our retirement, you know, and mitigate that. You know, that was a huge decision, but it had to be done, and it was needed and necessary. Short term, yeah, it really hurts us financially, but long term, it it also hurts us financially. But it got us where we needed to be. You know, it got us in a much better place monthly bill wise, financially, things like that. You know, there's things that's like those things are real conversations too. You know, like, do we do this? Do I do this? Why do we do this? How do we do this?
Mhm.
You know, I think, you know, I look at the money I had to take out of my retirement and I'm like, did I really want to do that? No. But if I wouldn't have, you know, shortly thereafter, our truck broke down. You know, your car, we were having issues with the other car. You know, my vehicle, all the vehicles were causing problems and becoming huge financial burdens. You know, and we did what we needed to do to make it work, and it worked out. I mean, it was conversations, a lot of conversations for the two of us that we had to have, a lot of tough conversations, like, and we, you know, it really drove that. So
Well, then I did finally get my disability approved, so that takes
it
some of the
helps.
stress off.
Yeah, but you know, that's the part that bothers me too is, you know, it long-term disability, yes, but I don't trust it. I've watched too many people fight with insurance companies. My brother, you know, my twin brother's been out of work since he was 17 and he got approved for disability. And after 24 months, they just said, well, we're not going to pay you anymore. And then,
In an
you know,
ideal world, I won't need it that long.
I hope not, you know,
My goal is to get off of that as soon
yeah,
as I possibly can, because I don't plan on, is it making us comfortable? Sure. Do I plan on using that forever? No. I worked hard for my education.
yeah.
I want to use it. I
And
want
you
to do the
still
things.
paying for your
Yeah,
education.
yep.
So,
So yeah. But it sure does. It helps take some of the stress off, at least some.
so some, yes. But it also adds stress because, you know, it's like you said, that comfortable part. Like, I don't want us to get comfortable in that. So
Right.
that adds stress to me. Like, you know, it's like, all right,
I
what are we
meant
gonna do?
financially comfortable so that we're
Yeah.
not stressing out and having to pull more money out of our retirement.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
It's there, you know, it's needed, it's necessary. I wish more people had access to it. I wish the companies were more would work more with the people in the beginning, so it wasn't such a battle and it doesn't put people into positions where they
Yeah.
have to rely on, you know, taking money out of retirement, paying extra money in penalties.
It was over a year of fighting for it.
Yeah.
So I know there are people that have fought longer than that, but man, that was a hellish year trying to get all that taken care of.
Yeah. You know, and then, you know, our vehicle insurance, we didn't pay for hardly anything and we fought for
Yeah.
that. Um, that it causes that initial, I'd say that was probably the worst, was probably the initial first 6 months to a year, because that was where it wasn't just us fighting and trying to get by, and it was us fighting to survive.
Mhm.
It wasn't even like we had a couple months, like I had a couple months of bills put away in my savings account when everything happened, and it was, you know, comfortable. You know, I mean, my bills were paid. I didn't care. Um, But then everything happened and we got in the accident. And it was like, well, after I was like, I never thought that it would be after 3 months we would be in that spot. And then we were. And then it was like, oh crap.
I
So,
think that was the hardest part for me because having taken care of people that have had concussions over so many years, I've seen the wide variety of the pace that people get better.
yep,
And I I didn't recognize my own symptoms at the beginning. I didn't realize how bad I was. So I just thought it was going to be a couple of days off of work and no big deal.
yeah,
When all the appointments kept getting delayed at first, I thought, well, shit, this is pissing me off again. Excuse my language. That I wanted to get back to work. I wanted to get cleared by all the appointments so I could get back to work. And every time I went to another appointment, it was, did you realize this was going wrong? No. Did you realize this is a problem? No. And I never realized any of it.
yeah,
And I still, I think I'm much more aware of my deficits now, which is probably what's causing a big problem with my mental health. But it's,
like I said, welcome to the norm.
I do not want this to be my new norm. And I know that that's always a struggle too with other people that I've talked to that have had brain injuries as well, is it's finding that new norm and
Yes.
accepting a new norm.
And
Um,
then recreating yourself in that
yeah,
is
I gotta find
tough.
myself again. So the last big part, grief over my job loss. I tried going back to my old job and failed it craptastically, as I like to say. I didn't realize how unprepared I was for that day, foreshadowing to see how soon I would be back. And then I've not shared that on the show yet, but I
Yeah, but
did. uh,
I disagree with you on that because I don't think it was that you weren't ready to try. And I don't think, I mean, yeah, I think it was still more than what you were ready for as far as like diving into work. But I think you were had such a high stress level knowing because I saw how you were trying to prepare the weeks before, the days before, the day before, um, and how stressed out you were, how worried, how anxious. You know, you were playing 5 million scenarios in your head as to how things were going to go. Um, I think your brain at that point wasn't allowing you in a lot of ways to perform at your best. But I also agree that you weren't quite ready to go back because you didn't have control over it. And that's the part that's tough. When you can't control that thought process, when you can't manage that, that's the hard part. So,
I used to deal with stress all the time. I've never not been stressed. I've never worked as little as I do now in my entire life. I gave it in high school. I worked more hours in a week than I do now at my part-time job on top of going to school and being in sports and drama and everything. And I've never not been stressed and I've never had an issue getting through it. I always pushed through. I've had so many people tell me that I was the strongest person they knew because I could always make it through anything. So I have a new tattoo for those that haven't seen it. My Captain Marvel with my brain with my electricity on it, being the strongest person with no memory. But I just, where was I going with that thought?
I don't know. It was more just trying to create yourself and find your norm. That's kind of where we're at. And this is why she's, yeah. So the grief over the job loss.
Grief is real.
It is.
And I've been stuck in that anger stage. So all the stages of grief, I keep going back to that anger stage over and over and over again.
Yeah. And there's no amount of time that you're gonna get in and out of it. You know, no one says everyone's grief is different. Um, like it's just like talking about everyone the way everyone copes with everything. Like, how do I cope with anything? I ignore it as long as possible, and deal with everyone else's stuff. Because if I can keep everyone else going, I'm okay. Then I hit a wall. That's where, I ended up in the hospital with some form of vertigo that like I don't suffer from vertigo. Like I go skydiving, I go, fight fires, I jump off buildings, I mountain bike ride. I, I'm that adrenaline junkie, that guy that, you know, rodeoed, trained horses. Like I don't have vertigo. I don't have dizziness issues, and then all of a sudden I do. That's where I think we talked about, there's a lot of that other stuff. And then I move into a job now where it's been much slower paced and it's different and I struggle, so like I take on more work because I'm so used to performing at a much higher level in my employment. And now I'm forcing myself to slow down and it's really hard to do that to make sure that I have time for my family. Um, because I've always worked. So even for me, it's, I loved what I did and the people I worked with. So even I've got grief in this, and that I just didn't even recognize until recently. So it's, everyone deals with it differently. And
I went from my highest high seeing brain surgery to being a few hours later in the ER with a C-collar on my neck and ice pack on my knee, and my life forever changed. It sucks.
yeah,
There's no good word for it. It just sucks. Still working with OT, still working with speech, and they've said too that if I wasn't such a high performer prior to all this, that I'd be better off now because I would have learned different techniques to try to learn things better again. Because right now I'm trying to learn new things for work and trying to relearn things to get back to being a nurse practitioner. And my brain just says, nope, not today.
yeah, it's tough.
That sucks. Sucks. But I'm
Yeah,
really glad that I have a really good partner in all of this.
me too.
And we've got some amazing kids that help us.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's tough. So we've done well.
Hmm.
Done better than most, I think. You know, I've you read articles, there's things I've read, trying to learn and trying to see things, the struggles that people go through and the loss because it upends their life and the people whose partners just walk away. Just like I'm normal. I don't have to deal with this shit. Good luck. And they leave that mess behind them. But that's
Maybe it's a
where,
good thing you're not normal.
yeah, maybe. But it's that draws us to each other. It bonds us together much better than I think if anyone, the people that do go through it and stick together like us, it's rare.
Hmm.
So
And
I'm
we've been through a
thankful.
lot of shit in this past year and a half, but
Let me tell you.
I definitely think we are stronger on the other side for it. So, mhm. Anything else you want to add on before we wrap up for today?
No, other than, if you're the guy or if you're the partner who who has to take on more, do more. If you're not the one with the major brain injury or the setbacks or the grief and the loss, um, it doesn't mean that you don't have, doesn't mean that you're not dealing with some of the same things. And it's tough. I rely heavily on my faith and my belief in God. Um, my prayers. I mean, the first thing I do when I get to work every morning, that's my time for me. I spend the first 20 minutes of my day. I've got a daily devotional. Um, I've got two actually. One of them is just prayers. So I kind of look through like right now I usually choose one for the week. But this week's been a little bit different. I open up the book, I look and I say, all right, God, fill my heart. What am I needing to hear today? Um, and I find the prayer that's in there. And then the devotional, I just follow it's my day by day devotional. So I read that, and then I've got my Bible on my phone, and I read that along with my devotional, and then from there, it's just a few moments of prayer. Um, I've heard people say, "Oh, religion is a crutch for people who are weak." I've heard people say, "Oh, it's not real." It's as real as you want it to be. it's real to me. I believe I have true faith, and I know it's different for everybody, but finding that and having that solace, that gentle comfort is just a few minutes, a few moments every day. Um, does amazing things. And then two, having that same thing at the end of the night when I go at home at night and I've got my wife, we talk, we communicate. And sometimes it's just sitting on the couch, sitting next to each other while I play a video game and she's on her phone. Other nights it's laying in bed where we're snuggled up next to each other and we're actually talking. Um, and then I fall asleep. But then the next thing
Mid-sentence.
is mid-sentence. I do a lot more than people think. It's like borderline narcolepsy, but it's that emotional health part of it for you. If you're not the one with the injury, is critically important. Your health, you can't help them if you can't help yourself, and that's hard for me. Um, and it's probably hard for a lot of people to admit that they need that help. But don't be afraid. Like my wife is reach out to me, talk to me on the podcast. I can't count how many times since this her and I have talked, and I've been like, we need to do more. Like how she wants to help other people with this. How do I help with that? How do I help her drive that? I don't know. I'm not in the medical field. I'm not there's but how can I support that? Whether it's sharing the podcast on my Facebook page, whether it's okay, well, there's a clinic or there's a convention in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 6 months. You want to go? Let's go. Um, to okay, I just need to get out of here and get into the wilderness. Okay, pack a bag, take her camping. Um, it's just doing whatever needs to be done for the mental health of both of you. And the sanity is hard. And sometimes it's hard to know when and how to do that. So ask people. Don't be afraid to reach out. Um, that's probably been one of my biggest weaknesses is I don't know how to admit that I need help. I don't know how to admit those things. I just do it. Um, but that's part of how I grew up. So you make your path and you pave your way. And then there's times where you can't. You got to rely on someone else. So got to do it as a team. That's all I got.
Mm-hmm. You need to have the team. I would not be where I am without your support, without the kids. Without our family. I wouldn't be where I am. So I appreciate all of you. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.